well, welcome to I don't know if this is the weekly, the daily, the nightly. We are all in some kind of eyes crossed, mass hysteria, exhausted, tired,
Right.
about this, long process, which is sometimes it happens like that. But I'm so
But no,
glad I'm.
no. But let me be very clear. It doesn't have to happen like this. It happened like this purposefully.
Right.
And this is what I was trying to get people around me to understand. You know, because I study this and I dig so deep into it, then I understand why it's happening this way. It's happened this way because state legislatures, in particular states, Pennsylvania being one of them, um, said that they did not want ballots to be counted early. They wanted ballots to then be counted the day of. Why did they want that? Because they knew that Trump supporters were not as cautious around the virus as, say, other people. And because they knew that Trumpites, hard Trump supporters, were be damn the virus, they knew that they were going to vote in person. So, if the way that our coverage is set up is that as soon as returns start coming in, they start reporting them. So they knew this was going to cause some level of hysteria because people were going to see what's called the same day vote and not the mail-in ballots, because they made it so that they could not process those mail-in ballots beforehand. So the reason that Florida was able to call early is because their legislature remembered what 2000 was like, and they did not want the national eye on them, and so they allowed them to count those mail-in ballots before election day. So I want to be very clear that it's taking a long time purposefully to create a vacuum for Trump to then go on this frenzy.
Yeah, which we see now. Before we go into the Trump hysteria, let's talk about Georgia. Everybody. Let me just say this: people were dissing Stacey Abrams about 6 months ago, saying she was thirsty, saying that she wasn't ready, and here she is now, the superhero. Right? Everybody is. They have crowns on her and licking her toes now. I just have to say that before we talk about Georgia. But let's talk
Yeah,
about.
yeah, but my thing is that, like I said to someone else, I said praise Stacey Abrams, and right after you say the name of Stacey Abrams, you better say Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, because Keisha Lance Bottoms took hits. She took so many hits this cycle. Brian Kemp, the governor, tried to censor her behind what she was saying about the coronavirus, about what she was saying about his recalcitrance and his direct influence, where she has the authority inside the city. So when we talk about Stacey Abrams, let's also talk about Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who's taken many hits during this cycle, who was on the short list for Joe Biden. And I believe that Stacey Abrams can pick what cabinet seat she wants, except for the Secretary of State. I think she can walk into the Biden Harris right now with her bargaining chip and say, hey, I want to be secretary of whatever, and get it, because of the fact that she may have lost the battle, but she won the war. So what is there to say about Georgia? It's what I was saying on election night, was that you have to look inside of these suburbs of Atlanta. You need to look at Gwinnett County. You need to look at Clayton County. You need to look at Henry County. You need to look at DeKalb. You need to look at Fulton. And what we know is that, and the reason that I put the Keisha out there, or Mayor Lance Bottoms out there, is because of the level of the level of vitriol that was spewed did embolden people in those areas. I watched it with my own two eyes. I was in the Atlanta metro area for the summer, this entire summer. And so I watched it as the heat came up on her and Stacey Abrams. Black folks stood in solidarity against it. And so that's why I was saying, and because we knew that she lost in Georgia by a very narrow margin when she ran for the governor. So I had a feeling that Georgia was going to flip blue. And this is also to say to people that are on the ground, trust people that are on the ground. Trust people who have been in the atmospheres, because like I said, I was in Atlanta all summer. I was in the Atlanta metro area all summer. So we have to, in some ways, divorce ourselves and some from the numbers, and then trust the people that are on the ground that are doing work. And that is why grassroots organizations are so important in our democracy, because they give us a pulse of what's happening on the ground. And we just have to make sure that we are in communication with one another, people that are on the ground versus people that are in the administration. And I do believe that this impending administration will do a better job of that than we've seen done in the past.
I wanted to add something about the Atlanta vote, but so we're actually talking about cities. If you want to talk about battleground states, a lot of the cities that pushed the line or told the line
Or where
were
Black people are.
Black voters. Like, so, let's talk about that. What's interesting in Atlanta, though, you might probably have a flip or maybe a dual dynamic where Black people not only live in the city, but they also live in the suburbs, right?
Yes.
So this is a very different phenomenon, right? So I think that also needs to, that also needs to be acknowledged as well, because like you said, if it wasn't for the Black suburbanites, Georgia might be, very different. But, what we see are a lot of people are living outside of Atlanta because of, it has grown so much, and, all these things in terms of the city, within the 285 is getting, more expensive.
Right. And let's also talk about Savannah, though, to your very point, right? Savannah, if we talk about Savannah and the county, right. And, well, yeah, right. Make it. But if you talk about Savannah in particular, when we talk about cities and then the sprawl outside, right? Savannah is a southern city, and if you go to your point to your exact point about the spillover of Blacks in these suburbs, right? We see the exact same thing in Savannah, right? And so that is why I tell people, you're exactly right. Things are getting more expensive inside the Beltway, inside of what they consider their Beltway of 285 inside of Atlanta. But like I said, there are people that are making decisions to live outside of that Beltway, purposeful decisions to do so. And there's lots of Black families where we're seeing this trend, and Savannah is another example of the spot of that trend that's also inside the state. And so we, when it comes to Georgia, I had a good eye on it. I think Arizona is exciting, right? And I think Arizona is exciting because it speaks to the fact that the Latinx, the Latinidad is not a monolith. And because they're not a monolith, right? What we're seeing in Arizona. But another thing that I think that people have to really take into consideration is before we get into the consideration of these two important people in Arizona, I want to then speak to the presence or the eternal presence of John Lewis, because I really truly believe now in Georgia, because I want to make sure I give him his honor and his due. I really believe that he's smiling. And there was a cartoon that showed him and Elijah Cummings arm in arm looking over voters with wings in the state of Georgia. And so I do believe that presence makes a difference. And now flipping over to Arizona, I believe Senator McCain's energy played an influence, because people have to remember that Trump bashed Senator McCain so profusely, and the citizens of the state of Arizona see him to be a beloved figure, see him to be a honest broker inside of the Democratic structure. And so for Trump to go after him so vehemently, I think that played a role. And I also think that the shooting of Gabby Giffords and the fact that she resurrected her life in many ways. People thought that she was going to die, and if she wasn't going to die, she was going to be a vegetable. The woman is fighting every day to try to live some semblance of a normal life after serving our country. And now her husband will then serve in the United States Senate. And so what I think people have to remember about politics is that it's relational. And if you piss off certain people, there are consequences.
Yeah, there are consequences, and people do not forget. I mean, people have very long memories as well. And the Trump McCain conflict was so bad that McCain said, "I don't want him at my funeral.
I don't want the man at my funeral."
Right. So that's some, like, I'm in the afterlife, I'm throwing up the finger to you. So those are some very that's a lot of energy. That's some, that's a huge statement of I don't mess with you. So I do agree with that. What is your call with? And also, I'm going to say this about Georgia. They were talking about these pockets in Athens and I think also Augusta as well.
Yep.
That was pivotal in moving the vote. But going back to Arizona, we had this really great conversation about Latinidad, and I saw this thing that showed that basically the Puerto Rican contingency said, no, we most of us are voting in Florida. We actually, cast our vote for Biden, right? But Arizona's
but they made their intentions known, right? Like, yeah, on Tuesday night y'all said that we was lumped in with these Cubans. No, that's not us. So let's be very, very clear, right? The sub contingency was very loud and proud to say it wasn't us.
Right. So, I definitely have to acknowledge that. And so Arizona and Nevada, I'm thinking that the voters in Arizona and Nevada, in terms of, the Latinx Latino community, are similar. What are your thoughts on that?
They definitely are similar, but what I think people have to remember in Nevada is that this is just a political game. And what I mean by a political game is that the state is a blue state, right? Nevada has a Democratic governor, etc. But the entire economy in the state of Nevada rests on Las Vegas. And as you know, because of Corona, Las Vegas, for all intents and purposes, has been shut down. It has reopened, but it's nothing like what it used to be, and it's not generating the same type of income. And so many people are nervous there in the state. They are nervous. I think there's a pocket or a contingency that's nervous, but I think there's also a pocket and contingency that works in those hotels, right? That are Latinx, that work in the hotel, that work in the service industry there, and also are worried about their safety and the ability to get a handle on this virus. Because if Las Vegas is going to open back up to its full capacity, then they are going to be the most at risk. And so I think there's this balance that's happening there. And I told my mother, she said, well, why don't they just call it? I said, because if they call Pennsylvania first, then he's at 270. And if they call Nevada afterwards, then they'll be able to bargain with the people inside of that state to say, hey, listen, the race was already over. The game was already over, right? Mm-hmm. They know that the state's going to go for Biden, but they are holding back on reporting numbers. I don't think they're not counting. I just think that they're holding back on reporting because they want another state to be called first so they can be in some ways in the clear. And I understand it. I understand it from the perspective of you have these millionaires, billionaires that are running these casinos that are your constituents that you are going to have to be responsible for, and they drive the economy of the state. And so if we already know that Biden's going to be the winner, what difference does it make if we call us later? Harry Reid was on MSNBC last night speaking about why he thought why the state was going to go for Biden. Harry Reid has spent most of his life in Nevada politics before he even came to the Senate. And so what I guess my point is that we know what's happening in Nevada. It's understandable, I think, from a political perspective, but I do believe the groups of Latinidad are similar there. And I had the opportunity to sit on a panel with Professor Pilar. I can't ever pronounce her last name, but her first name is Pilar. And she was on the ground. Again, trust people that are on the ground. And she organized and she's very much a academic activist. And she was on the ground in Arizona and in Nevada. And she just talked about how she had to really explain to many of the people that she calls herself in community with that it is in our best interest then to align with the interest of Black people and understand that is where our power lies, because we have some of the same economic interests and we're being treated very much the same.
Right. Those are some really good points. That is actually something I would like for us to be for it to be a continuing thread to see what that looks like. Because even though states like Texas, didn't flip to blue, and Florida didn't flip to blue, there still is some it's not completely red, right? And so I'm really interested to see how those who now fall under this identity of, people of color, folk of color, even though I prefer, I'm a Black person, but if we're talking about this, this collective, how it is we move, because that has been, I think, central to us trying to broker powers, that when we're almost there, all of these fractures happen, and then people, then pull on to their soul and individual interests. So I think that's a running thread. Question. There are a good number of non-white women, right? Black, Latino, Asian women who ran for Congress. Give me some of those feelers of some of the races that you were watching, or firsts that you saw, that you would like to talk about.
I think that we've been so sucked in on this 270 that I haven't really checked back in. But I will say this: I will say that the Senate for Democrats is not out of play. That
Really? Okay.
No, it's not out of play.
Okay.
We're at 48-48 right now with Mark winning in Arizona. Right, Mark is the projected winner.
Okay.
Mark is the projected.
Okay.
That's why I said it's not out of play, right? Another reason.
You didn't say that. You said that. Okay.
I said it wasn't out of play, and I've always said it wasn't out of play, because we also have to remember that this tight race in Georgia may produce a runoff for all four candidates, and not just Warnock, because the margin is thinning again.
Oswald, with the votes, right? Because they say a lot of the votes coming in are blue.
Right, Oswald against the incumbent, because I refuse to say the racist name. Right. Oswald against the incumbent, he is still, with turns coming in, is beating him almost 2-1. So we may get a runoff in both situations. It's an automatic runoff. In the special election, it's a runoff because you had to get to the plurality, because there was 3 people running, right? And Reverend Warnock is up. Last time I looked, about 32% of the overall vote. So he's even leading. He was even leading in the plurality, right? So we're gonna have that special election absolutely in January. We may get another one with the incumbent and with Ossoff, because the numbers are tightening. Because again, Ossoff is picking up in the state of Georgia, which hasn't been called. He's getting almost 2-1 of all of the mail-in ballots. So we might get another run at it with those two, right? And so that's what I want people to be kind of keen and watching. And then we have to remember that inside of the Senate, the tiebreaker is the Vice President of the United States, which we now know will be Kamala Harris. So we have to keep, and I'm not saying that it's going to flip. I'm saying that it's still in play here, and we need to understand that it's still in play. And we're not talking about it because North Carolina has stopped all their counting and won't start again counting until next week. But we also have to look at that Senate race in North Carolina, right? Because it's close. I think it's inside of 30,000 votes. So when we're looking at the map, and again, I haven't been able to be as drawn into all the women of color that have been running around it. I will say to you that the representative that unseated Clay, right, who won in Missouri, and I think it's District 5.
Was talking about Cori Bush?
Yes. And so it is excellent to see that she will be inside of the House. And I think that's very great news, that the electorate felt that they needed to move out somebody that they felt inside of the Congressional Black Caucus that was no longer active, that was no longer serving them, and that we didn't lose the seat, because that is the scary part of when we remove someone that has been serving for that long, is will the seat then be captured? And so again, I think that's some great news to see. Cori Bush will be headed to Washington in January. But what I will say, I'm a little sad that, and I know I'm looking far ahead, but I am a little sad that Corona has robbed us of glorious inaugural balls.
Well, they're just going to have to do it how people get married, and then they have their reception, a year later or a year later. The wait would be worth it. Put it like that.
Plus, it's just sad that we get, it's just sad that we get our first woman vice president, regardless of color. And we don't get to see her in her, we don't get to see her. I've been to inaugural balls. It's the whole feel of the city. And I think that's the other sad part, right? Is that I have friends in Washington right now, and they're talking about just how morass the city is, and how parts of people are extremely jubilant, but other people are it's very tense. And I think that's the sad part, is that the United States is known for its peaceful transition of power, and nothing about this process this time around is going to be peaceful.
Right. And that was several. I wanted to, here you go. You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't think that I think this was a Pyrrhic victory. I think that even though, or it will be a Pyrrhic victory in terms of people are exhausted. It was a hard fight. Maybe perhaps it's not even the moment. And then people are still dying from coronavirus. We don't even know what the numbers will be after the election. So there are a lot of things in place. So perhaps even having those type of luxury events might not be the appropriate time, depending on where the country is.
Oh no, it's not the appropriate time. No, you're exactly right. It's not the appropriate time. It's just, it's just a part of me that grieves for the idea that they're not appropriate time. But what we can say is that at least we will be getting a president who's going to be serious about doing something about this virus.
Right. But what I was going to say, but this is what I highly doubt that Joe Biden will be able to serve the full 4 years. I would highly doubt that. But if he does, it is expected, though, that Kamala will be the heir to it. So we may not be celebrating a vice president, but even perhaps a president. You know what I mean? A woman president, which is what I hear the little birdies talking about. It's more so of that. But it is.
Yeah, we'll see if we are, if we get and look into these numbers. Still 55% of white women voted for Trump. Still, once we look at, we saw 20% of Black men vote for, and I'm not blaming Black men. I'm just saying that they went from 13% last in 16, and now they're up to 20%, right? And many of them were just not satisfied with Kamala Harris. Just many Black men just could not wrap their heads around this one person I know calls her Obamala, meaning that she and I understand his critique. I understand his critique. But what I'm saying to you is that Black men are just having, I don't disagree that she's heir apparent. I don't disagree with that at all. I am just nervous about what that's going to really look like, and what pressure that puts her in right now to be constantly running, even in this frame.
Right. Well, I have to say this. A lot of people that I've spoken to are only voting just to, as we said, to get out Trump. It's not like they were super impressed with the ticket. I wasn't super impressed with the ticket either.
But to that point, that's why I think it's important to dial in to Black voters, especially older Black voters in South Carolina. And the reason I think it's important to hone into that is because they call James Clyburn the kingmaker. Well, he made a king, and he made a king, and Black people down in the first state to secede from the Union. Let's be very clear. These Black people have a history. They understand white folks. They know what white folks are going to be able to take and what they're going to be able to do. And so what I think is apparent here is that, to your point, enthusiasm wasn't the driver here, right? And I think that older Black folks and Black folks in South Carolina kept their eye on the fact that energy and being impressed by and feeling overly exuberant about a candidate wasn't going to get us to the winner. Right. And that is why every time I give an interview, I want to highlight those Black people in South Carolina who said, hold up, now y'all, Iowa, you done, New Hampshire, y'all done. Let us say what the country's going to do. And we now see what the country has done.
So I don't discount, I think part of when Biden took South Carolina, one of the overarching criticisms were, oh, these Black people are not savvy, they're uninformed voters, they're acting like sheeple. And I don't ascribe to that at all. But what I will say is that Clyburn better pay and better pay big. There needs to be more resources pumped immediately into South Carolina. The black community needs a lot of help. And so in this presidency, there's a lot of things that need to be done with these cities, Detroit, Philadelphia. Black people in these cities are struggling. So there needs to be, on the other side of this, some serious pressure to ensure that there is more laws, policy, and energy in order to enterprise, because the racial wealth, enterprise these communities and Black people, because the racial wealth gap is off the chain. I want.
With that being said,
let me say
sorry.
this.
I'm sorry.
Let me also. I have to say this. I was disturbed with the hashtag blame Black men. That, you know what I mean? That I don't know who created that, but I feel like a lot of the focus, just I would say the focus in terms of really saying that the problem is white women and white men, you know, voting for Trump was the biggest issue. And I really, that part of this whole process, I totally disagreed with. And I think it was a propaganda that was fed. I don't know where it just came out the blue. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed, even though 20% of the voters did vote for Trump, 80% voted for Biden.
Right. But my thing is, that's why I said when we discussed it, I named white women first. Right. This is nothing to do with Black men. It's just to say it. I highlighted that to say that we saw a rise. I truly believe was because of a woman being on that ticket. But I in no way blame Black men.
I know you're not. Yeah,
I think that's ridiculous. Yeah. No. I agree with you totally. I think it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I think that it is. I think it's asinine, and I think that it eats away at what's going to then provide unity. And to be honest with you, I think that it's intentional, right? Because we are in the driver's seat right now, right? We are in the driver's seat. We can get, we may not get everything we want. And I want to be very clear with Black people is that Joe Biden is a deal maker. And now that he's back playing a game with Mitch McConnell, there are going to be lots of deals. And I'm not saying that we're all going to be happy with them, but I am going to say that our issues are actually finally going to be on the map for there to be a fair fight. Because what I truly believe is that we are in a period of restoration. We are looking at another reset that we saw during the FDR years. We are staring that in the face. And so during FDR, and the restructuring, we were not a large enough size of population. We didn't have enough political power. This time around, we do. And so what the question then becomes is, what are we going to get? For me, what I've been telling every Black person that's of any level of activist level, any level of academic level, is that we need to sound like a beaded drum. What we want is reparations. That is the answer. Don't come to me with all these little token nothing. We need one grand bill in reparations, and inside of the reparations bill, then we can talk about healthcare and all these other pieces. But what we need to come with is, we want reparations to the tune of this, and it can go in these pots, because that now is the one thing that we should be coalesced around, because that is our big ticket item that we need to push for.
I 100% agree. Now I have 100% agree. Okay. I had so much to say, but I'm going to move forward because I know there's a couple of things I want to get out before we end. Is I read, and correct me if I'm wrong or if this is fake or exaggerated, that there is once again a push to get Nancy Pelosi out as the majority speaker of the House. And it is led by these emerging, younger, more progressive Democrats that are beginning to get elected. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, no, they absolutely are. But Nancy, who's a shrewd politician, will sit them down and win again, right? I definitely think that they're bubbling up. I definitely think that they should bubble up. But I also think that after they bubble up, they should settle back down. Right. Power is not conceded without a fight. Right. So there has to be a push, but you have to know when to hold them and when to fold them. And I believe the progressive wing is great at pushing the country and pushing us to where we are. But we have to remember that what I truly believe that we're seeing in this country is the last white gasp. And on the left, that last white gasp means pulling us closer and closer to socialism, because then they get to benefit on the left. White folks get to benefit on the left in that scenario. Where on the right, we see a pull to aristocracy, right? Because that's going to allow them to maintain power. And if we keep that in our goalposts, if we keep that in our eyesight, that the objective for them is total power and control, and what we have to understand is that we must serve as the wedge to say, no, you can't pull us to the fringes on either side. This is what you promised us in a democracy, and this is what you must deliver. And so again, I think it's important for that progressive faction to be pushing, but I do believe that Nancy Pelosi is the one we need in the driver's seat, because again, Nancy knew how to push Trump's buttons to get what she needed. Remember there was the shutdown of the government, and then he tried to give the State of the Union address, and she was like, "Oh no, this is my chamber. You don't come in here until I invite you." And so we ain't invited you, and you can take your behind on back up there to 1600 Pennsylvania. You got to have people in this moment who understand the system. And so it's not by accident that I think we're seeing this older generation, this silent generation in this moment, because this is the last gasp. And what we're going to see very quickly is a turnover, because as you've stated, many of these folks in 5 years, 6 years from now, they'll be dead.
And that's my concern. My concern is that it will be an RBG moment, not only for Pelosi, but also for Maxine Waters. So even though, there, in my opinion, there must be some way where there are people who are younger, have more energy, and Nancy Pelosi can serve more as an advisor, because there are a lot of people who do a lot of wheels and deals and they're not elected that also move the votes.
But they don't have access to the money. They don't have access to the money. Right. And my thing is that we can litigate that piece of it once she's gone. If you don't have access to the money, then it doesn't make a difference. And I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree that they're not. One thing that we can say about Nancy Pelosi is that she's not a tyrant in power, meaning that she does listen, right? She took a meeting with all of the people when AOC and all of them were out in the media and upset. She didn't come out and diss them and wag her finger, none of that. She took a meeting with all of them, sat down and had a meeting with them, and then they worked it out internally. And so what I'm saying to you is, I don't think that there's not someone next up in line. I do believe that they are grooming who's next up in line. I just don't think that they're making it public so that there's not a public fight so they can pit them against one another. I think the Democrats are finally learning, right, that, see, this is what the Democrats fall in love, whereas the Republicans fall in line. And I think this is a fall in line moment, because the fall in love moment is right behind it. You know what I'm saying? And I always use California as this example. When the state of California hired Arnold Schwarzenegger to run our economy as a state into the ground, run the state into bankruptcy, who had to come fix it? Jerry Brown. Right? Jerry Brown, who understood the California budget, who understood the volatility of it, who understood all of it, within 2 or 3 years, got the state back solvent and stopped furloughs. And so who was his lieutenant governor? Gavin Newsom, right? Who's now the governor inside of the state of California today. So again, that's what I believe is happening in this moment. What's happening in this moment is the righting of the ship, so that the next captain can sail off smoothly.
Well, what I think is that Nancy Pelosi may not present herself as a tyrant of power, but she's a power hog. And I believe, and my position is that she working on the Hill. There's always somebody in the back. Now, I don't know if they're grooming them or these people are the gopher or the apprentice that really is not fully developed. That is something that I have to see. But I do believe that she definitely is playing with fire as much as she knows, and as healthy as she thinks she is. I think that she should lead with some level of integrity and grace. But that is, and I'm not the only person. But we shall see what that looks like. Okay.
But remember, when we were talking about speaker, the next speaker is, just as old. I mean, we were looking.
Talking about Mitch. Who?
No, the speaker inside of the House. It's on the Democratic side. People were pushing for Barbara Lee.
I thought they were pushing for Hakeem Jeffries.
Hakeem Jeffries. Either way. Oh, and yeah, that's to my point. One of them is on MSNBC right now. But again, I don't feel like, to be honest with you, I would never want Hakeem, whether Nancy was in there or not. I just don't. From my study of the Congressional Black Caucus, nothing against Hakeem Jeffries, nothing at all. But I do not believe that he is in any position to be the Speaker of the House and wrangle in the amount and the nuances of how the whole thing works. So,
but doesn't that talk about the racism, the race, the elitism, all these things that go on and how you get a bill passed, which is part of the problem in terms of, our process, right?
The process is designed the way it is for a reason. I'll say it that way. I will also say to you that that regardless of the racial nature of the legislature, right? I've written a whole book about the Congressional Black Caucus functioning in a racialized legislature. And I won't doubt that. I'm in no way taking that away, saying that it's not a racialized legislature. But what I will say is that there are certain qualities that I believe that you have to be able to have. And one of those things is you got to be able to work with the other side. As much as we, as much as we have now turned compromise into this dirty word, the other side has to be able to trust you. And for all intents and purposes, the other side is not in a position to be bargaining with Hakeem Jeffries. I mean,
when has the other side worked? When has Republicans worked in concert with Democrats?
Oh, we've seen it. We have seen it. Right?
I'm talking about consistently. I'm not talking about.
It's never consistent. That's not the nature of our democracy. I mean, there's times when it's worked and there's times that it's not. I mean, that's the beauty of the democracy, right? Where there's times where we've been able to get along and there's times where we haven't been able to get along. And this heightens just one of the times that we haven't been able to get along. I think people need to understand that historically, I mean, they used to have duels. I mean, there's one House of Representatives that was shot dead after a gun duel. Like, this level of cantankerous and contentiousness is not new. This is the history of the country. So I guess my thing is that in this moment, we need to move quickly because like you said, in the first 100 days, we do not want them be bogged down, allowing things to politically fester, right? One of the critiques of Obama is that because he went so hard after healthcare that he spent up too much of his political energy. And so I guess my point to you is I do not want to spend any political energy arguing over who we already know is effective. Let's use the person that's effective to get exactly what we want. That's where I am. If she wants to hog power, great. If you don't want to be challenged, great. Then behind this door, let's talk about what we got to get for you not to be that way. And if you think we're playing with you, then just wait, right? And to be honest with you, I believe that's the conversations that are being had right now.
Okay, that's definitely fair enough. So we have the elections. When the big question is that what's the range of time are you giving for it to the official announcement of who is for president, and what do we need to be worried about or thinking about if it's Biden?
I think what we need to really be worried about is what this transition is going to look like.
That's what I'm talking about.
Because it's not going to be if it's Biden. It's all about when it's Biden. And I told my mother on Tuesday night when there was Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada left to go on Tuesday night at about 1 a.m. California time. I told her, I said, the game is over. I said, I do not see Joe Biden losing any more than 2 states. I thought that he was going to lose North Carolina, and I thought he was going to lose Wisconsin. Now, today, I amend that by saying, well, we know he's won Wisconsin, right? And so what we know is he's only going to drop 1 in Pennsylvania. I mean, he's only going to drop 1 in North Carolina. So this is a decisive electoral college victory. So let's be very clear about that. This is a decisive popular vote victory. Let's be very clear about that. And so what we have to be concerned about is, what does transition look like, and how do we make sure that we do not have a civil war? Because that, to me, is what we need to be worried about. And again, I may sound like a broken record. An old white man is the person that needs to tell them. Because if you remember when John McCain was in a debate or at a rally, and he was running against Obama in 2008 for the 2008 election, and the lady got up, this white lady he's a Muslim. He started yelling and screaming, and he said, no, we're not going to do that. We are not going to disparage this man. We know he's not a Muslim. We know he's not this. We're not going to do that. And what I'm saying to you is, in this moment, it's kind of like, I grew up going to church, and when the older sisters came to you and was like, yeah, I know you want to dress cute and do what you want to do at the church house, and that's fine, but this outfit is a bit too much, right? And so to me, that is the spirit in which Joe is going to be speaking. I heard y'all. I get it. I understand. I'm in the same club. I'm a white old man like you, or I'm white and male just like you. But enough is enough. And I think the message is just as important as the messenger. And so what I think you're going to be seeing a lot of is a lot of him coming out, talking about unity, unifying the country, and telling them to cut this stuff out. And I also believe you're going to get a Joe that's going to be a lot more off the cuff. So what we're going to start seeing very quickly here.
I hope so.
I think that we're going to see a Joe after the inauguration, or after the inaugural period, one that's going to be far more, off the cuff, right? It's going to be far less scripted. So what I think we should also look for is, what is their plan on coronavirus? How is it going to affect the economy? What are they going to do as far as stimulus? How are they going to get Republicans in the Senate to move along? What are we going to do with the court, right? We need to now expand that court and get 2 more justices on that court, right? To go from 9 to 11 to kind of balance this foolishness out, where they push through a white woman who's never argued a case before the Supreme Court in her life and has only been a judge for 3 years. And so those are things that I think that we should be looking for immediately after this time frame. And I think that activists should celebrate. They should be excited about this moment. And then we need to get back to work about strategies to then push this administration to make good on some promises.
That's a good place to stop. I do appreciate talking to you for the weekly, nightly, daily. We're somewhere in the election twilight zone check-in. I appreciate you so very much. So
yes,
I look forward to hearing from you, because I believe the next time we talk, it will be on the other side of the decision or the announcement of who's president, and we'll see exactly where the country is.
All right, now, see you later.
See you later. Thank you.